I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the New Forest. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're going to be doing a walk from a place called Ivy Wood, which is about a mile to the east of the village of Brockenhurst, which is right in the middle of the New Forest. And we're going to be doing a roughly 4-mile circular route heading east into some beautiful woodland. We'll come across some lovely heathland, a quite gorgeous pond, an interesting Bronze Age barrow, the River Lymington, and a few other things along the way. So do join us. Now before we start our walk, I thought I'd have a little look at St Nicholas Church in Brockenhurst, which is just on the outskirts. There's a few things that I want to show you there, so we'll have a look around and then we'll drive on to our car park starting point. Well, I thought we'd start by having a look at St Nicholas Church, which is just behind me here. Turn around and show you. It's thought to be the oldest church in the New Forest. And it's located at the top of a hill about a mile to the south of Brockenhurst, and the mound that it's on may be artificial and possibly originally a pagan worshipping site. There was a Saxon church here and Christians have worshipped here since AD 737. But the Normans rebuilt it using stones from the Saxon church, and it was enhanced greatly by the Victorians. Well, just to the side of the church is this magnificent yew tree, which has got a little bit of history attached to it. Well, isn't that wonderful? Now, it was carbon dated in the 1980s, and it's thought to be well over 1,000 years old. So it predates the oldest part of the church, and it's amazing to think that it would have been here at least 100 years before the New Forest was established by William the Conqueror. Well, now technically, although it's in the New Forest National Park, I believe it's not actually on Crown land, but nevertheless it really is the granddaddy of the area with regards to trees. I think the actual trunk is hollow, so the girth is increasing due to the splitting of the sides. Well, the first thing I want to show you in the churchyard is this very impressive gravestone of Harry Mills. Now, to tell you the story behind him, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from this book, The King's England, Hampshire with the Isle of Wight, by a chap called Arthur Mee. I've got to have my glasses on because the print's quite fine. It's a historical book series written and edited by me. I think there's 43 in the series. This one was written in 1939. And basically what Mee did, he employed about 12 other writers that went around the countryside, visited towns and villages, and then did little stories on them. It was almost like a modern day doomsday book. Anyway, Harry Mills, here we go. The churchyard in which the ends of the earth have met is famous for its gravestones. Among them is one with a quaint carving of a hut in trees in memory of Brusher Mills, a familiar figure in the New Forest. He was given his name because of the careful way he brushed the New Forest cricket ground between innings, but earned his living in a very queer way, suggested by the snakes carved on this stone. His work was to catch snakes alive for the cannibal hamadryads in London Zoo. I think a hamadryad is a type of king cobra, might be wrong. Anyway, he had no fear of adders and picked them up with his bare hand. But the hut carved on this stone is a sad story. There is an old forest law which gives a man the right to claim a piece of land if he lives on it for 30 years. Brusher Mills lived in a hut in the forest for one day under 30 years. And it's sad to think that only a few hours before his 30 years were over, he came home to find his hut burned to the ground. It broke the old man's heart, and he died soon afterwards. Well, the second thing that I wanted to show you is on the eastern side of the cemetery, and it's this collection of war graves. There are over 100 graves of New Zealand, Indian and other national soldiers buried here who died in field hospitals at Brockenhurst in the First World War. Injured troops were shipped directly from the battlefield in Europe to the hospital here, which was based just to the west of the church. And something like 21,000 wounded passed through the hospital, with up to 1,900 here at any one time. The hospital closed in 1919. But the original white crosses here were replaced in 1924 by these engraved headstones, and the impressive memorial cross was erected in 1927. There's an annual Anzac memorial held here on the 4th Sunday of April each year, and it's attended, amongst others, by representatives of the New Zealand High Command and of New Zealand forces, because over 90 of the gravestones here were New Zealanders. But it certainly is very poignant as you go along and you look at the ages of some of these. 24, and over there 22. I did see a 21-year-old as well. They had no life, they were hardly men. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little investigation of the church at Brockenhurst. So I've just driven about half a mile away from there, and I parked my car at the Forestry Commission car park at Ivy Wood. It's just off the B3055, which is the Brockenhurst to Bewley road. Now, just before we head off into the woods and start our walk proper, as it were, I'm just going to make a little detour of about 400 yards to my left, which is to the north, and I just want to show you the location of what was once an old mill. Well, I've just crossed a little bridge that goes over the Lymington River. It's about 300 yards away from the car park. I want to show you the location of what was once the old mill. There is a property here called the Mill House, but the old mill, well, it showed on a 1759 map, which was the first detailed map of Hampshire, although on a 1913 map it had been renamed as a sawmill. The mill and mill house was demolished in 1964, leaving just the wheel pit, mill races and sluice, and the present house here is relatively recent, built on the old site. Lovely to see it's still got the 2 encrusted millstones as a reminder of its former use there, and what looks like some rubble in the background. I guess that must be from some outbuildings, and again you can see the little channel there full of water, which relates to the old mill site. Well, I've now left the B3055 and headed into some woodland to actually start the walk properly, which Logan's pleased about. So, just show you where I am. I've just entered an enclosure. This is the Perrywood Ivy enclosure that was established in 1866. The soil actually was quite good here. It was ex-pasture woodland. So a lot of ash, maple and hornbeam, as well as oak and beech. And there were blocks of conifers added in the 1960s. But that's beautiful. I'm filming at the end of August in the morning. It's about 15 degrees already, projected to be about 22 degrees later on today. We had a lot of rain yesterday. In fact, it rained all day, so there's a real freshness to everywhere today. The rain was very much needed. I think we'd had, well, a little mini heat wave. But what it does mean is that it really has brought out some terrific smells in the forest. I see some New Forest ponies there hidden behind the trees. In the far distance, we're not really going to be able to see much of it. There's a building there. It's a hotel called the Pig Hotel. It's fairly large. It's about 26 bedrooms and it lies in 7 acres. It used to be called the Whitley Ridge Hotel. Well, I'm continuing to head east. I'm looking out for a cycle track to get my bearings, but I've just passed by a little stream. I think it's called the Etherise Gutter or something like that. But look on the far side, you can see some looks like a remains of a concrete structure. Now I'm guessing that that may well once have been a bridge. Looking at an old map, this might have been an old track. In fact, if I pan round, you can just about make out the banks of a boundary bank, and then there's a grassy track, and it comes down here and it just stops at this stream. And then it sort of carries on the other side, but just through the trees there you can see a track. That's not the cycle track, but I think that's a relatively new path that crosses at right angles. At least I hope it's not the cycle track, otherwise I've got lost. Well, I'm delighted to say I found the cycle track. Always comforting. Means we're not lost. So if you are following this walk, I know a few people do, this is the non-cycle track that I've just come up, and then if I bear around, we're on a sort of crossroads now, and there's a post over there which has got 309 on it, and we're going to carry on heading. It is in a sort of northeasterly direction, and we'll be following the cycle track for some time now. But I'll tell you what, the sun has now come out in all its glory. It really is gorgeous, the weather now, and there's a little breeze as well, which is just cooling us down. Perfect for walking. Well, we're now heading south, still on another cycle track, and just passing Lady Cross Lodge. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see too much of it because it's actually now a private property surrounded by high fencing and big gates and security cameras. But originally, going back years ago, it was a hunting lodge here, and it was thought that William II, old Rufus, slept here before he was killed or murdered at the Rufus Stone, or was it Bewley, in August 1100. Henry VIII stayed here many times, and Charles II had his mistress Winifred Wells installed here in 1671. But in the late 17th century it was in such a bad state of repair that it was torn down and replaced with the current building. In 1869 the Crown decided that they didn't need it for hunting, so it was rented out for about 100 years, mainly to aristocratic families. The property was sold by the Crown about 50 years ago, and I believe that it was up for sale about 4 years ago for £7.5 million. We've just crossed the B3055 again, still continuing to head south. We're now just about to enter the Round Hill campsite, which is just on the edge of the old RAF Bewley airfield in the Second World War. I have done a video walk there, so if you want to know more about that, do check it out. I'll put the link at the bottom. But I say we're just on the edge of it, but we will see the little bits of evidence of the old airfield. But just as I was passing through, I spotted this rather horrid looking object that's stuck to this poor little birch tree. It's a burr. I know it's not an uncommon sight, but this is quite a large one, isn't it? And it's probably had some sort of injury or fungus or virus or stress at some stage, but it doesn't seem to kill the tree, but it just might reduce its lifespan a little bit. Well, it's quite a weird sensation passing through this campsite. And the Round Hill campsite, like so many others in the New Forest this year, have been closed all summer because of COVID-19. And normally this place would be heaving with tourists and camper vans and tents, but it's completely deserted. But what it does mean is that the ponies have got it to themselves, so they're not complaining. Right in the middle of the campsite is this lovely pond called Round Pond. It's also known as Pope's Folly. No idea the origin of the name, I'm afraid, but it does appear on some very old maps. It has been round here for many years. But if I just turn round and show you a few walkers and cyclists that have made it out here, so we're not completely alone. But it does look very green, so I don't think I'm going to let Logan have a little paddle in there today, I'm afraid. We'll now reach the far end of the campsite and now going to start heading west, and that'll take us back to Ivy Wood. So just before we say goodbye, just one last look. Over on just behind those trees is the old water tower that was here when the RAF airfield was here. It's been refurbished since the Second World War. And then just panning round, and just in front of me here we can see just behind that little fencing is a Bronze Age barrow called a pudding barrow. It's about 25 metres in diameter. I'm pleased to say it is still here, because I say during the Second World War, when they were building the airfield, there were quite a few Bronze Age barrows that were just levelled to the ground. Oh, someone's stopping for another pit stop. Great time of year for blackberries, of course. But now we're just going to head into the Perrywood Irons Hill enclosure, which was established in 1866. And some of the original oak and beech are here, but the core of the enclosure is now pine, Douglas fir, some larch and Norway spruce were planted in the 1960s and the 1970s. But I need to tear my companion away from all these berries. Well, we're now nearly back to the car park, and this is the Lymington River in full flow. An old friend of ours, we've come across this 4 or 5 times in previous walks on the New Forest. Of course it rises at the Ocknell enclosure. For the first 6 miles it's known as the Highland Water, and then it gets to the Boulderford Bridge where it joins up with the Ober Water, and then for the final 7 miles it's known as the Lymington River, and it flows out into the Solent at Lymington. It is certainly in full flow now after the rains of yesterday. Few dragonflies and damselflies as well. Love the sound of the babbling water. And then if I just pan round, we've got Ivy Wood to my right, and this is one of the best places in the forest to see bluebells. Obviously you've got to come in April. What a smashing way to end the walk. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up or a like, and do make a comment, and as I always say, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe. That way hopefully you'll be able to join us for another walk sometime in the future. We've had a terrific walk today. The weather has been brilliant once again, and we're off now back to Brockenhurst to the Snakecatcher pub for some light refreshment. That was a pub that was named after our friend Brusher Mills. Although I see we are by a blackberry bush here, so it'd be rude not to take a little bit of refreshment now. So until we meet again, thanks for watching and cheerio.